A bill that would make it impossible for trade negotiators to change Canada's supply management system, which protects farmers of eggs and dairy, is being held up in the Senate, but it could become a football in this minority parliament. Why is protecting supply management one of the few things all politicians seem to agree on? Martha Hall Findlay is director of the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Amanda.
And it is surprising to me, this is one of those issues where you get these across-the-board consensus votes in Parliament. Why is supply management such a fiercely protected thing in Canada?
Because the dairy lobby is so incredibly powerful and people are afraid of losing votes in Quebec. And I will point out, though, that the last time around, it wasn't quite as unanimous as the time before that. And so I think we might be making some progress. But Amanda, the Bill C-282 is not really a referendum on supply management. Supply management has been almost entirely protected in every trade negotiation, much to the dismay of some of us who actually don't support it. But this is about enshrining one particular sector in our trade in the legislation that would prevent it ever being on the table in trade negotiations. This has never been done by any country anywhere, right? For reasons that are should be fairly obvious. It's called negotiation, and the minute you take something off of the negotiation, then it puts everything else in question. The next thing will be somebody else that we're trying to negotiate a trade agreement with will enshrine something else that then we lose access to. So it's actually right now less about supply management itself, but about the folly of trying to enshrine it in legislation.
And of course, the timing of this, Martha, comes, we are only a couple of years away from having to negotiate our NAFTA, the CUSMA, again, because that's now the sunset clause that exists. We are trying to negotiate a deal with the UK post-Brexit and failing. Supply management does come up as an irritant in our negotiations every single time. I guess I'll go back to, it's not only, economists would say bad policy from a consumer point of view. It raises prices, it protects a small group, but costs the rest of the economy. But now also a bad, as you say, trade tactic. Why did it get as far as it did? For someone who's been inside those halls and can shed some light, why did it get all the way to the Senate, where it does seem as though it's trying to be changed or blocked, but it went all the way that far, and it could well become a law?
Well, kudos to the Senate. Sober second thought is actually engaged in sober second thought. The House of Commons vote did not go through rigorous scrutiny, and so it's clearly a ploy by the Bloc Québécois to booster, support that they are having and seeing in the province of Quebec, because the majority of dairy farmers are in Quebec. But the UK has actually responded very negatively. They did as soon as Bill C-282 was passed in the House. The UK responded right away with respect significantly to cheese. The Americans have already told us. I mean, they've told us in no uncertain terms there are three big issues facing any potential trade negotiations, regardless of who becomes president. This is really important. This is not just this is whether Harris or Trump becomes president. Three major irritants. We don't spend enough on NATO. We don't take defense seriously enough. So that's one. Two, our digital tax situation is very frustrating. And three, and I probably would say this is the most important one, is in fact our supply management system for dairy, poultry, and eggs.
So good to have you for this, Martha. Appreciate your time on it.
Oh, anytime. You know me on this issue, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Martha Hall Findlay is director of the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. Time for the takeaway and generational fair play. The issue of increasing Canada's old age security payouts seems to have hit a nerve. Children seem to have an innate sense of justice. It's not fair is a rallying cry that begins well before any deep understanding of morals, ethics, or relativism come into play. Ironic, then, that one of the least fair political moves in recent memory will hit young people hardest. And the younger they are, the bigger the price. A move in Ottawa brought about by Quebec's Bloc Québécois to raise the level of OAS by 10% is hanging over the minority government's head. They have till the end of the month to agree to raise the payouts or face an election. But election or not, the government would be wise to resist. Whatever you think of the current level of support, government largesse comes in a context, notably that there's a fixed amount in the kitty, so raising funds for seniors means reducing it somewhere else. And unlike many others who have struggled with affordability, OAS is indexed to inflation, so at least in theory, seniors are protected from the recent sharp run-ups. And it's worth remembering that payments to elderly people in Canada is already the single biggest budget item for the federal government other than running itself. And the carrying costs of those payments falls on the shoulders of taxpayers. So when our working population shrinks thanks to demographics, the remaining workers have a bigger burden. And since lowering entitlements is an unlikely scenario, any increase tends to be permanent, a new long-term cost. The problem is even less fair when you consider that the government is running a deficit, meaning it's taking on debt to pay current expenditures. That debt will be paid by young people. It's interesting to note that when polled, the majority of Canadians support the increase, probably because the majority of Canadians expect to benefit from it themselves one day. But who is speaking for the toddlers who are neither polled nor can vote? My takeaway? In a democracy, the largest group often has outsized political power. It's up to us to make sure we speak up for those who can't stand up for themselves. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.